When you hear breaking news that once again perhaps the relationship between US and China is unfolding, what does that mean for you in terms of the velocity at which you need to allocate money to the startups that are willing to strengthen national defense?
Well, thank you both for having me here. There are a couple of different things that we think about when breaking news like that comes up. I think, one of the critical timelines that we've seen the Department of War really highlight is this 2027 time horizon of how do we get ready to prepare to fight if we have to. And one of the ways that we think about it on the startup side is just how quickly can we get capital flowing to the right types of subsectors. And so that capital is starting to flow, the reforms are starting to happen, we're aligning both capital and reform in a really critical way.
Is the Department of War doing enough from the reform perspective?
I think so. I think I've never been more optimistic than I am right now because you have leadership talking about a variety of different programs. Secretary Driscoll over the last couple of weeks actually announced the Army's FUSE program, which is a $750 million sort of strategic venture capital firm for the Department of the Army, at least, to start to bridge the gap between early stage startup, which we invest in at Venrock, and true scale, which is necessary for the Department of War.
Morgan, for the audience that's just joining us, we are live at Anduril in Costa Mesa, California. We were and are having a special show focused on defense tech. The president posted on Truth Social. In that post, he said he had been due to meet with President Xi of China in 2 weeks and now sees no reason to do so. He called China increasingly hostile, and he has threatened a massive increase in tariffs on China. In that moment, markets fell. That's what has happened in the last 40 minutes. Is there a direct impact on private markets? In other words, when you are looking at a term sheet or there's a pitch deck on your desk, are you thinking this is now a more attractive investment opportunity because of something the president says on Truth Social?
I think one of the key factors that comes into play with news of this kind is startups are not immune to supply chain risks. And so I think one of the things that we end up thinking about is how does the supply chain get impacted by something like tariffs? We've got a whole host of companies that are US based that are starting to fill the gap. We're here at Anduril. Anduril is one of them that are starting to fill the gap with the domestic supply chain, but it's still a challenge.
And Morgan, all of this breaking news, this Truth Social post was sparked by the fact that China was once again really resisting allowing rare earths to go from China into Western nations.
That's their bargaining chip. Yeah. That's their thing.
Their leverage. And how much has that impacted the startups that you've backed thus far?
So we've seen a variety of different startups start to play in the critical minerals space. It's one of those domains that would not typically have been venture capital backable businesses previously. But one of the things we're seeing is the Department of War and the Department of Commerce really aligning budgets around these types of opportunities that create big potential return profiles for venture.
Morgan, a year ago, Caroline and I were at Rocket Lab, and the conversations we had centered around how SpaceX had established this space industry in Southern California, had ripple effects and built out commercial space in America. Is Anduril doing something similar in defense technology?
Yeah, Anduril and Palantir actually, Sham was a great representative for Palantir just a few moments ago. I think both Anduril and Palantir have led to an influx of talent that we would not have otherwise had building for this problem space. So we're seeing a ton of startups founded by former folks coming out of both Anduril and Palantir. But from a risk standpoint, I do believe there's a risk of potential over-consolidation. If we have the neoprimes of today, the Palantirs, the Andurils as our monopolies of tomorrow, I think we've failed.
And so therefore, you keep on feeding the next generation of Andurils and Palantirs. I'm interested as to whether the valuations are healthy from your perspective. We've had so much desire to get into the early defense IPOs that happened, particularly space-orientated ones this year. We're in a government shutdown, but there is real want from the public markets to back these businesses, and it must affect valuations in the startups.
The opportunity is massive. That being said, I'll borrow a Trey Stevensism. We've seen a bunch of kamikaze rounds. Some of these rounds that are super healthy from a valuation perspective, and they're really early. We haven't quite seen the budgets catch up to where we're seeing these valuations. The Department of War is one of these places where we know how much capital is going to be spent in a particular domain, in hypersonics and in critical materials, but we haven't quite seen the promise come out yet.